Hi guys, this is Hirosaki. This story is all about what if Naruto was the bodyguard of Azula. Naruto is banished from Konoha, but gives them the slip and boards a ship. Soon after, he is shipwrecked on Ember Island and is saved by Azula. 3 years later, Naruto is Azula's bodyguard while she hunts for the Avatar, but did he see the last of Konoha? Before we start, kindly like and subscribe to this channel, and look over the description box for the author of this amazing storyline. Welcome aboard. Chapter 65, Murders and Missing in Action. Location, Konoha. Azula sat at the counter of the kitchen. Even though she wasn't trying to, she kept looking over at Naruto, who was currently writing. It had been 2 days since they had returned to Konoha. Since then, they hadn't been given any missions and Naruto had kept to himself, even from the rest of his team. He just sat in the house, at first sewing his clothes. She didn't remember the cuts in the clothes being there when they came back, and when she finally dared to ask where they came from, all he said was "I sparred." And then writing. In those 2 days, whenever she tried to talk to him, his answers were short and clipped, like he didn't want to talk to her. On the one hand, she was a little annoyed by it. But on the other hand, she didn't really know what to do. Ever since she first met him, Naruto was always the upbeat, cheerful one who always had a very good sense of humor, both sarcasm and deadpan. But ever since they had come back to the elemental countries, it seemed like that person was slowly disappearing, and she didn't like it. Deciding to take steps, she stood up from her chair at the counter and walked over to the couch where Naruto sat. "Naruto, we need to talk," she said to him, sitting down next to him. "Put the pen down." He didn't put the pen down, only stopped its movements. "What do you want to talk about?" he asked her. "You and your current attitude," she answered. "It has to stop." This time, he did put the pen down. "And what is wrong with my attitude?" he asked her, his tone quiet and his eyes focused on her. "To begin with, you need to get out of this house. You've been in here ever since we got back from Kumo," she told him, her confidence overcoming her hesitation. "You even refused to play a game of Pai-Sho with Sokka when he came by yesterday." "So?" he asked her. It sounded like an innocent question, but she also knew it was a loaded question. One misstep here, and she would be shut out. "You've never refused a game of Pai-Sho. It's one of the ways the two of you keep that ridiculous point thing going." Despite what she said, she kinda wanted the point thing to come back. Ever since they had left Kumo, not once had the phrase "that's a point to you" been uttered. He gave her an annoyed look. It is not ridiculous at all. And there he is. She thought triumphantly as the Naruto she knew and loved briefly showed itself. If it's not ridiculous, then why did you refuse the game? The annoyed look was replaced with one of melancholy. "I just didn't feel like playing a game, that's all," he told her quietly as he turned his head and looked at the wall in front of him. She reached over and took his hand in hers. Surprised at the contact, he looked over at her. "Naruto, I know you think that it's your fault that B died, just like you've always thought that every man who died beside you or under your command was your fault. But you've got move past it." He grimaced at those words. He had tried, Kami know he's tried. But it never seemed to work. They were always there, Gao, In, Old Lee, and even Killer B now. "I don't think I can, especially not after last night," he said to Azula. "What happened?" she asked, concerned. "Was it a nightmare?" He gave a dry chuckle. "You know, I almost wish it was. No, Saifu paid me a visit. He told me that the Akatsuki were currently sealing the Hachibi away. And since he already knew about how I'm currently beating myself up about it, he decided to be nice and not show me the process in a dream." His hand had unconsciously clenched into a fist. "There are days when I just really want to punch him." Azula didn't say anything in response. She just pulled him into a hug. He was surprised by the move, but didn't complain. In fact, he returned it, relishing in the comfort and warmth of her embrace. He was glad for it. They didn't hug each other enough, something they should probably do something about. Feel better? Azula asked him. A little bit, yeah. He answered honestly. Thanks, Azula. He smiled at her as she pulled back out of the hug. She was glad to see that smile, for it always managed to make her heart skip a beat. I still want to punch Saifu though. She couldn't help but laugh at that. Come on. Let's go talk a walk outside. You need the fresh air after being in here for 2 days. She told him. He nodded in agreement. They both stood up from the couch and walked out the door, closing and locking it behind them. They went down the steps and out onto the street. The storm that had hit the village was gone. In its place was a sunny blue sky complete with big fluffy clouds. People went about their business in the streets. Adults went past on their own business. Kids raced down the streets, intent on having fun somehow. And families headed for places to have picnics, for which it was the perfect day for. No one really paid attention to the fire paragon and his girlfriend. If they did, they either ignored them or gave them a brief nod of recognition. Naruto preferred it like that. Any more than that, he would probably start arguing with that voice again. Don't focus on that. He told himself. Enjoy the day. And it was such a nice day too. Hell, he was tempted to do a Shikamaru and just watch the clouds. It would probably be very relaxing. The question was, where was a good spot to look up comfortably? What do you think of? Azula asked, looking at him. I was just wondering where would be a good place to be to kick back and relax. He told her, deciding to omit the part about cloud watching, not knowing if she would laugh at the mere prospect of it. When she heard this, she couldn't help but give him a look. You've lived in this village longer than I've been it. Surely you would know where a good spot would be. She said with a raised eyebrow, voice all but dripping with sarcasm. Hey, this isn't the Fire Nation. Things don't stay the same every year. He retorted, feeling a little defensive. She gave the surrounding buildings a quick look. Well, that certainly explains the patchwork look it seems to have going on. She commented. She wasn't lying. Each and every building had odds and ends attached to them along with cables going everywhere. When he heard that, he smirked. Don't go knocking the patchwork, Azula. You and I both know that it is part of the charm the village has. Fair point. She conceded. He wasn't wrong. The whole patchwork thing did give the village a sort of makeshift charm. Just like when she had seen it for the first time, it looked like the place was being added on and improved. Quite unlike the capital of the Fire Nation or Ba Sing Se, those places looked like they hadn't changed in the past decade, let alone the past century. Still, you should have at least some idea of where to go. She said to the blonde, re-emphasizing her point. Fine, I think I know a spot. Then by all means, let's go there. She stepped out of the way, ostensibly to let him take the lead. Thank you, I will. He walked past her and down the street. And don't look at my ass. He told her without looking around. Too late, she replied with a grin, her eyes immediately looking down at said ass. The blonde groaned slightly, but said nothing. After she was done admiring it, she caught up with him. Together, they made their way through the streets and the people. Eventually, they went from the streets and people walking aside them to walking in silence to a gentle green slope of a hill. Here we are. Naruto announced as he stopped and lay down on the hill. Azula laid down beside him. It was both peaceful and comfortable. As she lay on the ground, she couldn't help but look up at the clouds. It's something to look at, huh? The blonde asked her, noticing where her gaze was at. She nodded in agreement. I can't believe that I've never actually looked up at them before. Considering who your father was and how you were raised, I don't blame you. He said with a shrug of his shoulders. You probably just thought that they were there to let you know that it might rain. She nodded in agreement with what he said. You're right. She focused on one particular cloud. You know, that cloud almost looks like a Fire Nation ship. She commented, pointing out said cloud. Really? Asked Naruto as he looked at. Do you see that part of it looks like the stern with the smokestacks right in front of it? She pointed at the part she was talking about. Oh yeah, you're right. Now I see it. He looked over at another one. Ha, that one looks like Appa in flight. She could see why he said that. The cloud did indeed look like the sky bison in mid-flight, his tail about to flap down. That one looks like Fanning. She pointed at another cloud. He looked at it and couldn't exactly see it. Are you sure? He asked as he pulled out a cigarette and lighter. Of course, I'm sure. Can't you see how he's coiled up? She briefly wondered how her brother's dragon was doing. Thinking she had been jealous, Zuko had offered to help her look for a dragon of her own. She told him that she didn't need a dragon, she had Naruto. He chuckled and said that he understood. Not really, no. He admitted, lighting the cigarette and taking a drag. It just looks like a cloud to me. Well, what about that one? She asked, pointing at a different cloud. Can you see anything in that cloud? Are you kidding? That one is easy. He said with a smirk. It's Aang when he's about to do something stupid. They shared a laugh at that. The cloud did indeed look like the Avatar when he was about to do something dumb, and no one was around to stop him. You know, I have got to thank Shikamaru for this. He remarked after the laughter had stopped. She looked over at him. Why is that? He's the one who always wants to watch the clouds. Now I can see why he does that. It's peaceful. He took a slow drag from the cigarette. So one of the Konoha 11, people you want nothing to do with, gave you something that you like so much, you're willing to thank him. She said with a small smirk of triumph. It looked like all their nagging was paying off. He frowned slightly, like he was double-checking what he had said. Something like that. He said shortly, even though he was silently glad she didn't laugh. Let's not go there right now. Let's enjoy the peace. He looped his arm around her and pulled her in a bit more to his side. She didn't complain or resist. In fact, she welcomed it. We really should have more moments like this, she remarked as she leaned into his side. She was half tempted to just close her eyes and drift away into sleep. Yeah, we should. The blonde agreed, also fighting off the urge to fall asleep. His eyes were starting to droop when a noise snapped them back open. Do you hear that, Azula? He asked her. Yeah, I do. She answered, having also kept her eyes opened. It sounds like someone screaming. She noted as the noise got closer and louder. Not just anyone. He sat up and looked at where the noise was coming from. That sounds like Sokka screaming. And as if the blonde's words summoned the man himself, Sokka burst out of a bush at the bottom of the hill, running like his life depended on it. And considering that after a moment, Nyla came through the same bush, and went after him, it probably was. Help! Screamed the tribesman as he ran to get away from the Shirshu. Hey, Sokka! Called out Azula as she sat up and watched him run. Having a good time? Does it look like I'm having a good time? He shouted at her before yelping and ducking to avoid Nyla's tongue. Try turning sharply. Naruto shouted down at him, sounding like he was trying to be helpful. It might help a little. He doesn't bank well. Okay. He did as suggested and turned sharply downhill. However, just as he thought he was safe by running through another bush, he suddenly tripped. All the others heard a surprised scream and the sound of Sokka falling into water. I probably should have mentioned the fact that there was a stream there. The blonde mused as he took another drag of his cigarette while Azula trying not to laugh, and failing. I don't think you need to chase him anymore, you mangy excuse for fur. He shouted down at Nyla. The Shirshu swung his head to where Naruto's voice had come from and snarled. No, Nyla, you can't chase him. June told her Shirshu as she came out of the first bush, Akela and Suki right behind her. The Shirshu seemingly growled in frustration at being denied of attacking his favored target. Oh hush, I'll get you a good piece of meat later. The bounty hunter said, making Nyla look like he perked up in excitement. Akela just yawned before lying down to the ground. Hearing movement coming from beyond the bush where Sokka disappeared through, they all saw the tribesman in question, completely soaked, walked back through it. You are a spirit's damned asshole, Naruto. He told the blonde, pointing an accusing finger at him. You knew there was a stream there, didn't you? Of course I did, but I don't see why you're angry. Naruto replied with a fake look of confusion on his face. It got you away from him, didn't it? I don't see you running for your life away from him. That's because I filled my quota of being chased by angry Shirshu for the month. He said with a grin, cracking a joke. That's a point to you. June commented. He walked right into that one. Azula said to herself. But she was still loud enough for her boyfriend to hear her, making him flash a quick grin at her. And where were you when I needed help? Sokka said to Akela. The wolf just yawned again, and laid his head down on his forepaws, closing his eyes. Traitor, the tribesman muttered as water dripped off of him. If I remember correctly, Sokka, you're the one who said you wanted to spar against me alone. June remarked from where she stood at Nyla's side. Yeah, you and you alone, he retorted. That means not having to sick your Shirshu on me when I was about to win. In his opinion, it was very uncalled for. Hey, we have to use any and all tools at our disposal when in a fight, right? The bounty hunter said with a victorious smirk. Don't quote FS Sensei to me, June. I suffered under his teachings before you did. He fired back. Even though he was grateful for the training Jiraiya had given him, the hellish training still made him shudder. Don't worry about it, Sokka. Naruto said, getting both the air and water paragon's attention. She's the one who has to fight him later. You can have fun watching him beat her into the ground. The two men shared savage's grins with each other while June had to suppress a look of horror. Sparring with Jiraiya was never fun for the person who was sparring, but immensely entertaining for the audience. But before they could continue, the man himself appeared before them. There you are all. The Toad Sage said as he came into view at the top of the hill. I was about to go hunting for all of you. He gazed over at Sokka. What happened? Sparring, the tribesman answered shortly, not elaborating. Well, get dry quickly. We're needed by Tsunade. Do we have a mission? Suki asked him. No. We need to verify the fact we're not murderers. Location, Hokage's office. Last night, 3 people were murdered. Tsunade told them as they stood in front of her desk. They were found dead in their place of residence. The police force is still looking at the scenes, but they have told me that their deaths occurred around about midnight. And how do their deaths concern us? June asked her. She didn't look at the bounty hunter. Instead, she turned her gaze to Naruto. The people who are dead are Kohara Utatane, Hamura Mitokado, and Danzo Shimura. The air in the room went silent as all eyes turned to the blonde. I didn't kill them, he said quietly. He wanted to say something a bit acidic, but that small part of brain told him not to, and he wisely agreed. He agreed. Where were you around midnight? She asked him, being the Hokage instead of Tsunade. At my home, with Azula, he answered. It's true. Azula agreed. They were asleep in each other's arms for that entire night. You could have had someone else do it for you. The Hokage pointed out, looking at the rest of his teammates. June scoffed when she heard that. I was throwing back drinks with the front gate guards at a bar well until the early morning, she said. They were bunch of lightweights. What about you two? The leader of the village asked, looking at Sokka and Suki. When they were asked, they sprouted almost identical blushes. Well, we were up around that time. Sokka said nervously. Doing what? If possible, their blushes got redder. Jiraiya laughed at that. Can't you tell by the blushes on their faces, Tsunade? He asked his teammate with a grin on his face. They were doing the bedroom tango. If Sokka's and Suki's face had been red before, now they were lighting up like beacons. Fair enough, she conceded after looking at their faces. Are we the only ones being questioned? Azula asked her. No, your group is just one of the few I've talked to personally. You're dismissed. Her attention went back to the papers on her desk. The team took the hint and walked out of the office as well as the building. Well, that was random. Sokka commented, trying to get over the embarrassment of him and Suki being found out, even though the rest of the team already knew it. June shook her head. Murder is almost never random, she said in reply. That's where most of her high bounties came from. It's troublesome, but you're right. The voice of Shikamaru agreed with her. They all turned to the direction where the voice came from and the person in question along with his team walking towards them. She interviewed you guys too? Suki asked them. They nodded in agreement at her words. We were one of the earlier ones. Choji answered. But ever since she talked to us, we've kind of been curious about it all. Shikamaru rolled his eyes at that. You mean Ino's curious and she's just dragging us along? He told his friend. While Choji grinned at that, Ino scowled. It sure as hell beats lazing around your house all day, playing shogi or watching the clouds. She told Shikamaru. When they heard that last part, both Naruto and Azula shared a look and a quick grin. What are you two grinning about it? Ino demanded, noticing the grin. Nothing, they said in perfect unison. That, of course, made it all the more suspicious. She said, not believing it. Anyway, what are we going to do about it? She asked the rest of the people there, deciding to get back to the main topic. What are you talking about? June asked back. There's nothing to do about it. We just go about with our day. Oh, come on, June. Aren't you the least bit interested in what's going on right now? Will there be money for me at the end of it? Why would there be? It's a murder investigation. Shikamaru said, joining the conversation again. Which is exactly my point, June told him, and by extension, his teammates. If there's no money in it for me, it's none of my business. She explained with a shrug. Who the hell taught you that attitude? Ino demanded of her. She sounded like she couldn't believe it, even though it was said practically straight to her face. My dad while we were traveling the countries. She answered simply, and, if someone actually listened, they could hear some amount of pride in her voice. He taught me a lot of things. I'm sure he did. The female Yamanaka said, almost to herself. Did he also teach you how to be a completely selfish bitch as well? He must have been a complete and utter bastard to teach you something like that. Oh, Kami, help us. Naruto silently groaned as the words were said and echoed around them. Why did Ino have to say that? He immediately stepped between her and the now furious bounty hunter. June, you know she doesn't really mean it. She has no idea what your dad was like. He told her, trying to ensure that things didn't get worse. Quiet brawls were one thing. Public brawls were another and a lot more problematic. June had a look of fury on her face when she heard those words Ino had said. She also had her whip out and ready to use. Then perhaps she should learn to watch her mouth. I don't badmouth her father, do I? Nyla, who started snarling when he somehow felt, or smelt, his mistress' fury, seemed to hiss in agreement. You don't know my dad. Ino told her. And you've never known mine. The bounty hunter snapped at the blonde female, raising her whip like she was about to use it. He taught me how to survive in this world. He taught me how to never show weakness to anyone, when to be ruthless, when to be cool-headed, and a great deal more. Ino, apologize. Shikamaru ordered his teammate, his gaze losing the lazy expression it wore. What? Why do I have to apologize? She asked, actually surprised by what her teammate said. She thought he would have taken her side in this. You're the one who insulted her father. Now apologize to her. He told her, his face stern and unyielding. Choji decided to keep out of it by busying himself with another bag of snacks. She looked like she wanted to protest what the Nara clan heir had told her to do, but she couldn't hold his gaze. All right, fine. She turned to look at June. I'm sorry for insulting your dad, she said with an apologetic tone. No one was sure if she meant it or not, but they were just glad that a potential fight didn't occur. Good. June lowered the whip and began to coil it up again. See that you don't insult him again. Otherwise, I won't let Naruto stop me or Nyla. The blonde in question released a deep breath he had unconsciously been holding. Looking over at Shikamaru, he gave the Konoha shinobi a brief nod of thanks. You know, we might as well go help out the police force in any way we can, Saka said aloud, getting the attention from the group. I'm kinda interested in how they would do things in an investigation. Not to mention the fact you want to take a look at the stuff they have, and see if you can reinvent it in your spare time, Azula remarked. The entire Team Paragon knew that Saka was the idea guy and inventor of both their team and Team Avatar. If there was something that got him interested, he would do his best to try and figure out how it works. There is that, he admitted, looking unashamedly unapologetic. Both Suki and Akela rolled their eyes when they heard that. However, the Kyoshi warrior couldn't help but smile as well. How troublesome, Shikamaru muttered to himself. Come on then, we might as well get over there. The police force gladly accepts any and all help, so long as the helpers do as they're told. How would you know that? Naruto asked him. He would have thought that the lazy Nara would do anything to avoid something like that, claiming it would be both a drag and a pain. He shrugged his shoulders. Spent a turn there with Sasuke after you ran away, he said nonchalantly. Did you think he joined up for the hell of it? When he didn't get an answer, he turned around and started walking. Come on, we might as well get to it. As it turned out, they weren't the only ones who decided to help out. Both Team Kurenai and Team Guy, minus their respective sensei, decided to help out as well. Grateful for the help, as the police force was still trying to recover from the loss of the majority of its members, the head of the force separated them and sent a team to help with the investigations. Team Guy was sent to help at the scene of Koharu's murder, Team Kurenai was sent to Hamura's murder, and Team Asuma was sent to Danzo's murder. I thought there would be more blood, Ino commented as she looked at the murder scene. 3 years ago, she might have thrown up at any amount of blood coming from a dead person. Now, she was proud to be desensitized about it, but she still felt a bit queasy if it was a large amount. He must have been killed by surprise, Choji suggested as he looked too. Danzo had been killed in what looked to be a small study in his house. As the police had already documented how the body was found and had been removed, the three of them were helping with the bagging and the tagging. Guys, we're here to help bag items of interest, not look at where the body was, Shikamaru told them as he examined a nearby bookshelf, ignoring the spray of blood on the desk behind him. Get back to work. We're going, Ino told him, turning her attention away from the blood and towards a cabinet that was near the door. Choji lowered himself and examined the desk, ignoring the blood on its surface. As the room had already been examined by the police force, they were to see if they had missed anything, after going through the mandatory warnings and reminders the police force gave to volunteering shinobi. So, Naruto seems to be doing fine, the female Yamanaka noted as she opened the cabinet with gloved hands. Are we really going to talk about that here? Choji asked her, looking over at her. It didn't really seem like the place to speak about that subject. Where else would we talk about it without a chance of him or his team to hear about it? Nowhere, Shikamaru said as he lightly traced the books on the shelf with his finger. We are never going to touch that subject again. It's gotten us nothing but headaches and trouble. Oh, come on, she said with a bit of a whine in her voice. Drop it, Ino. He's made it abundantly clear that he wants nothing to do with us. But he seems to be warming up to us lately. She protested. Haven't you seen him when he's around Lord Jiraiya? When the blonde had first been brought back, he treated the Toad Sage like the rest of them, like he didn't even want to be around him. Nowadays, the two of them traded barbs and insults. But they said them with a smile, a smirk, or a grin on their faces. Well, Lord Jiraiya did go with them when they left the first time. Choji pointed out. Maybe they just got used to each other while he was over in the bending countries. And if they can get along now, why can't he try and do the same for us? She asked. Because the difference there is that Lord Jiraiya has seemed to accept the fact that Naruto won't be staying while some of us have not. Shikamaru answered her question, turning his head to look at his teammate. What do you mean some of us? Ino demanded, looking right back at him and holding his gaze, her tone both indignant and surprised. Had you given up bringing Naruto back? Troublesome woman, he muttered, breaking eye contact with her and turning back to the bookshelf. But he could still feel her gaze trying to pierce the back of his skull. Yes, I've given up trying to bring him back. This is his home, Shikamaru. He belongs with us, she said, her voice raising an octave as she spoke. And look where that attitude has gotten us. Getting led around by the nose in Ba Sing Se, and then getting captured like a couple of amateurs, failing a very important mission in the process. Technically, that's not true, Choji pointed out, standing up to look at his two teammates. Aang did defeat the Fire Lord and bring the end to the war, with Naruto's help I might add. You know what I mean, Choji. We weren't there to help Aang end the war. Thus, we failed our mission. And then he made us choose to leave. If that's not a hint to leave him alone, it would be too troublesome to figure out what would be. He focused his attention back on the books. He didn't want to continue this conversation anymore. But he knew that Ino wouldn't let it go. But he still came back. The female Yamanaka said in protest. If he wanted us to leave him alone, why would he come back? Ino, Lord Jiraiya brought him back the first time by force. Now he's back to help take care of the Akatsuki. Choji told her. Once that's taken care of, he and his team will probably be gone quicker than we can blink. Don't tell me you've given up too, Choji, she said to him with an accusatory glare. Helping out with the investigation seemed to be the last thing on her mind, even though it was her idea in the first place. At this point, it is rather hopeless to think that he'll stay. Maybe he'll try to stay friendly after he leaves, but it's a bit of a small hope. He looked his teammate straight in the eye. But the question I have is, why do you care so much having him back, Ino? She was silent for a moment before she spoke again. It's for Sakura, she confessed. I wanted to be a good friend and help bring back her old teammate. But what if Sakura has given up too? The Akimichi clan heir asked her. She had a hard time believing her friend would give up that easily. She wouldn't. Both she and Sasuke wanted Naruto back the most. They wouldn't give up that easily. Shikamaru said, mostly to himself. It was enough to get the attention of his teammates. What's up? Choji asked his teammate, looking over at him. Ino swung her gaze to him as well. It might be nothing, but there's a book in the shelf that's a little odd. It's a textbook from the academy. Why would an experienced shinobi like Danzo have something like this in his bookshelf? He asked aloud. Reaching out, he took hold of the book and pulled it out of its place on the shelf. As soon as the paper left the wood, a section of the wall behind the desk disappeared. How troublesome, a weight-sensitive, passive genjutsu. The lazy shinobi said aloud as they stared at the now obvious passageway. So that's why he had the book. Choji didn't say anything in return. Instead, he went over to the study door and poked his head out. We found something, he announced to nearby members of the police force. Location, Police Force HQ. While the 3 Konoha teams had been sent out to the murder scenes, Team Paragon had stayed at the headquarters of the police force. While Azula and Sokka were having the time of their lives by being given an informal seminar on how everything worked by a veteran of the force, of which a curious Suki joined, Naruto and June helping out any way they could, which was mostly comprised of getting someone something. As they helped set the information of the 3 murders on a board, 2 members of the force who were on the case looked at it. So, they were killed one after the other, with Lord Hamura being the first and Lord Danzo being the last. The man of the 2 said, looking at the times of death. Which means the killer had a partner or was very fast, right, Eiko? He asked his teammate, a female Hyuga. You forgot that he might have used clones, Genji. She told him. If the killer was able to, he could have used clones to kill them. She eyed Naruto's back as she said those words. But wouldn't the deaths have occurred simultaneously if that was true? Genji replied, ignoring where her eyes were looking. That would depend on whether or not the first death was caused by a clone or not. Naruto chimed in as he tacked a picture onto the board. If the clone had started the killing, it could have dissipated and let the others know. If it had been the original, he would have to have made a clone and then dissipate it to the other clones know. You seem to know a lot about how to use clones. Eiko noted, still trying to pin him to the board with her eyes. He stopped what he was doing and turned to face her. If you think I killed them, you're wrong, he said to her with simple ease. Having said his fill, he turned back around to the board. As far as we know, you're the only one who has motive, she said with an accusatory tone in her voice. And it's only day 1 of the investigation as far as I know, he replied, not bothering to turn back and face her. Try not to get ahead of yourself. She would have snarled at the blonde, had her partner cut her off. He's right, Eiko. We still don't have all the data. So let's just wait until we do before we start throwing accusations around here, he told her. She stood up from where she leaned against the desk. I'm getting a drink, she told him. She threw a glare at Naruto's back before walking away. If the place hadn't been busy, odds are her footsteps would have filled the room. So, what's her problem? June asked Genji. She was not blind, she had seen the looks from Eiko as well as some of the others had been throwing at Naruto's back. But for now, she just wanted to know about Eiko. She has a small crush on Sasuke, he answered carelessly along with a shrug of his shoulders. When he heard that, Naruto had to suppress the shudder he felt coming on. But he couldn't quite suppress the flinch. She is at least 10 years his senior, he commented without turning around. Mr. Pot, you really shouldn't be calling Mr. Kettle black, the fox told him with very dry sarcasm. The irony in what the blonde said was too much to be ignored even if he had tried. Was I talking to you? He asked with a bit of irritation. You are now. Frankly, I was getting worried. Ever since what happened 2 days ago, his Jinchuriki hadn't said a word to him. But now he was, for which the Biju was glad for. That doesn't stop her, Genji told him. Hell, half of the women here keep undressing him with their eyes whenever he's here. It's a little funny sometimes. This time, the blonde couldn't hold it in and shuddered for everyone to see. How did he end up here anyway? June asked, as she and the cop ignored the shudder coming off of the blonde. I thought that shinobi were always out of the village doing missions and whatnot. He grinned at that. Well, some of us prefer a slower pace. But as for Sasuke, that's already an old story. I haven't heard it. Truth be told, she was a bit of a sucker for a good story. That was half the reason why she went to taverns and inns, the other half was obvious. She's a bounty hunter, where else would she go for info on targets? He laughed. Good point. Anyway, it was 3 years ago. Sasuke had taken a leave of absence from the shinobi ranks in order to receive therapy. But aside from that, he didn't really have anything to do. So, being bored one day, he decided to come here. But as he walked through the front door, he encountered 3 nasty pieces of work, 3 Chunin from the homicide unit. We weren't never sure if they knew who he was or not, but when he told them he was there to see if he could help in any way, they told him that they had the perfect job for him. Which was? Jun pressed him. They took him to the file storage room and told him to sort out the entire room. The last thing they told him was he couldn't come out until he was done. By the time they had bothered to tell anyone about him, it had been 3 days later. When the captain and quite a few others raced down to free him, they had expected to find a hungry, thirsty, and angry Uchiha. What they found instead was that Sasuke, not realizing it had been 3 days, because he thought he was taking short naps, had not only sorted out the file room, he had also completely redesigned the filing system, making it better organized. He had also discovered by looking through some of the cold case files that the 3 Chunin who had sent him there had been bribed to tamper with evidence. How did that turn out? No one wept when the captain fired the 3 of them and put in a recommendation to the Hokage that they be stripped of their shinobi status. After that, the captain allowed Sasuke to volunteer with the police force during his leave. Some of his friends even volunteered as he did, but he was the only to stick to it. When he came back to the ranks and had been promoted to Chunin, he had asked the captain if he could join the police force. The captain agreed and hired him on part-time. What does that mean? Naruto asked, joining the conversation. He had been surprised by the fact that Sasuke of all people would have taken a leave of absence. He had the Uchiha would have been out of the hospital bed as soon as he could and get back in the field. Now he didn't understand what part-time meant when it came to Sasuke and the police force. The captain knew that Sasuke would still want to go outside the village on missions for the Hokage as well as probably hunting for you. He said, looking the blonde in the eye. So, he allowed to Sasuke join in such a way that he could still be a part of the police force and also go on missions, hence, hiring him as part-time. Before anyone could say anything else, Eiko came back in a hurry, with no drink in hand. Genji, come on. She shouted at him as she went past. We got something new. What's going on? He asked as he ran up to catch her. Jun and Naruto, having been caught nothing to do, went after them. The team at Lord Danzo's house discovered a passageway that led deep underground. I don't know all the details, but we might have just found out who our killer was. That made him hurry up, which in turn made Naruto and Jun hurry up. They arrived at a room that had a screen hanging off of the wall opposite of the door. To the blondes and bounty hunters' surprise, their teammates were in there as well. What's going on? Sokka asked as they walked in. Somebody at Lord Danzo's home discovered video footage. Eiko told them. Apparently, he was paranoid and had set up the latest model of security cameras all around his house and the village. We've gotten the latest footages, and we also found the one for where he was killed. How's that coming, Hayo? She asked the man who was fiddling with a nearby camera. Got it, he declared, flicking a button on the camera. Somebody closed the door and the blinds. Team Paragon did so without question, now interested in what the camera might show them. As soon as the room darkened, the camera came on, beaming light onto the screen. It showed Danzo's study, and judging by how dark it was, it must have been night outside, as they had already known. They watched as Danzo walked out of the passageway and sat down at the desk. He didn't reach for anything, he just sat there like he was waiting for something. It soon became obvious why he was waiting. Another person came out of the passageway within minutes of Danzo. He stopped behind the chair Danzo was sitting in, hidden well enough in the shadows they couldn't see him. "Come on, show us your face," Genji muttered as he kept his eyes glued to the screen. They didn't have to wait long for something to happen. With a flick of their wrist, whoever stood behind Danzo produced a kunai. With a single stroke, he slashed Danzo's throat open, letting blood spray out from the wound. As his head fell onto the desk, his murderer walked out of the shadows and looked directly at the camera. "Kami, it's a member of the ANBU." Hayo swore as they all looked at the murderer. He was dressed like an ANBU member. He had the necessary gear along with the tattoo on his shoulder. The only thing that would have made him stand from other ANBU members was his mask, which looked somewhat like a weasel. The murderer looked at the camera for around a minute or so. He then turned back around and walked back into the passageway. Before he went in, he created a clone. As he walked down the passageway, the clone took a book from the desk and put it in an opening in the shelf, causing the passageway to disappear, before dispelling itself. The video went on for another 2 minutes before ending, showing only the dead body with the blood coming out of the neck. Why the hell was an ANBU murdering an advisor to the Hokage? Eiko demanded as the screen went blank. Perhaps whoever did it was under orders? Genji suggested. But from who? The Hokage didn't know anything about the deaths until we informed her of it, and she's the only one who commands the ANBU. She stifled a groan of frustration. It's going to be difficult to try to figure out who that person is now. No, it won't. The veteran who was showing Sokka and the others how everything worked said with a grave tone in his voice. "What do you mean, Kazuhiko?" Hayo asked him. "I thought that an ANBU's identity was known only to the Hokage and her advisors?" "They are. But whenever a ANBU is picked, the Hokage sends a profile listing all the information we need to know about him, including the mask they wear. And each mask of an ANBU is unique. That mask belonged to someone who betrayed the village in such a way. The Sandaime Hokage had no choice but reveal his identity to both us and the normal ranks in case we ever came across him using that mask." He explained to them. "Who did that mask belong to, then?" Sokka asked. He seemed to take a deep breath before he answered that question. "It belonged to Itachi Uchiha." The entire room went silent as those words went through their heads and they processed it. It was something they wanted to think they heard wrong, but knew that they didn't. "Kazuhiko, are you saying that Itachi Uchiha snuck back into the village and killed 3 people? Eiko asked the veteran, sudden nervousness filling her voice. He nodded. "Yes, I am." "Oh fuck me," Genji said. It was a sentiment that was silently shared by everyone in the room. Most members of Team Paragon remembered how the man in question fought at Kozan. Those who didn't had been filled in. "We've got to inform Lady Tsunade about this. If Itachi is still in the village, we could already be in danger." Both Eiko and Hayo agreed with what he said. As the 3 of them looked like they were about to move, Naruto was frowning at the screen. "Something's wrong here," he said, mostly to himself. But he was still loud enough for the others to hear him. "What do you mean by that, Naruto?" Azula asked him. "It's been a long time since the Uchiha clan massacre, and until now, the only time Itachi had come back to the village was when he thought I was still there. He could have killed Danzo and the others then if he could. So why did he wait 3 more years before finally doing so?" he asked, not really expecting a good answer. "Well, why do you think he did it?" Hayo asked him, ignoring Eiko's pointed glare that was somehow telling him to shut up. "I don't think Itachi would do something like this," the blonde said with conviction. "It doesn't really mean anything to him. So, unless these murders are somehow a distraction, I don't." He trailed off as he realized what that meant, his eyes going wide at the idea. "You don't what?" Sokka asked him. Everyone had unconsciously leaned towards him when he had stopped talking, wanting to hear what he had to say. Echo, you said that Danzo had cameras set up all around the village. Does that include the Uchiha district, the hospital, and the Konoha 11 building? He asked her. Yeah, it does. Like I said, the man was paranoid. She answered with a shrug of her shoulders. And we have all the latest footage from these cameras, right? She nodded. He turned to look at Hayo. Do we have the footage from the Uchiha district? We do, but it only shows the front entrance. Hayo answered. Where are you going with this? Could you find it and play it, please? The cop did as he was asked, finding the correct footage and putting it into the camera. Once again, it projected a beam of light onto the screen. It showed the entrance of the Uchiha district. Nothing changed for the first couple of minutes, but then the same ANBU that had killed Danzo walked through the entrance, a mere 10 minutes after Danzo's time of death. They kept on watching with bated breath, and when they saw the ANBU again, Naruto released his son of the bitch. Swore the blonde. I knew it. No one said anything else, but they all knew what he meant. The ANBU had walked out of the entrance and over to the camera, letting it get a good look at him. Then he turned away, allowing the camera to see what he had slung over his shoulder as he walked away. It was his little brother, Sasuke. Chapter 66, Tracking in Uncertainty. Location, Konoha. Are you absolutely sure about this? Tsunade demanded of Team Paragon as they once again stood in front of her desk in her office. Their ears would have felt slightly plugged if the silence seal had been put into effect. Unfortunately, the news of their discovery had spread like wildfire inside the village. Completely sure, Naruto answered. We checked the footage 3 times. Itachi murdered all 3 of your advisors and kidnapped Sasuke. But we don't know where he went after. They had checked over and over again, but aside from the 4 cameras he allowed himself to be seen on, they had no idea where Itachi had gone. She could feel a headache coming from all of this. I need a drink, she thought to herself. But the crisis on her hands was much more important than throwing back a few rounds of sake, and she needed to stay sober for it. What the hell was Sasuke doing in the Uchiha district? She demanded. I thought both he and Sakura were in the hospital. A day ago, the 2 in question had shown up at the hospital and asked to be treated. When they had been asked about the cause of their injuries, their answer was sparring that accidentally got vicious. Seeing as they had many shinobi come with similar injuries and similar reasons, the hospital staff didn't push any further. From what Hayo found out, once Sasuke had been initially treated, he checked himself out, against the doctor's orders. Sokka told her. For some reason, even though he wasn't, the tribesman felt like he was on trial. He must have gone to the district then. But why would he go there? June asked, wondering aloud. She was already thinking about how to track down the missing Uchiha, mentally going through all the information she had on him. The kid did that sometimes when he wanted to be alone. Jiraiya answered her question. We never bothered or pushed him about it. They had always figured that he wanted some time alone. And look where that got us. Tsunade told her teammate. She pinched the bridge of her nose and took a deep breath. I'll have to send out every single tracking team the village has. If Itachi is already a day ahead of us, we have no idea where he could have gone. He couldn't have gotten far. He should still be inside the land of fire. Suki protested. She's right. The bounty hunter on the team agreed. Besides, you don't need to send out all the tracking teams. You just need to send out us. She said with complete confidence that would have bordered on arrogance if she didn't think she could back it up. The Hokage looked directly at her. And why is that? She asked her. She shrugged her shoulders. Because I am the one who has the Shirshu, she replied. If you've got something that has Sasuke's or Itachi's scent, Nyla can track them. She does have a point. Nyla's nose is something. Jiraiya told his teammate, having remembered the Shirshu led them to Ba Sing Se following the scent of Iroh that came from a stinky sandal. Tsunade was silent as she considered it. All right, fine. I'll send you and your team to hunt for Itachi. But I'm also sending 2 teams with you, just to be sure. She told them, making her decision. Which teams? Naruto asked her. The small part of his mind told him off, saying that he shouldn't ask questions of the Hokage. As he usually did, he ignored it, but he was also finding it harder to do so. It was like one of those annoying mother-in-laws he had heard married soldiers complain about, it just would not let up. Teams Asuma and Kurenai, they'll meet you at the gates. I'll also send Kakashi too. You are dismissed. She told them. The younger members of Team Paragon turned around and left the room, closing the door behind them. As soon as she heard the door close, she let out an audible groan. You know what? Fuck it. She thought to herself. Jiraiya, I don't care what Shizune or Taunton will do to me. Pull out that damn sake. She ordered her teammate as she rubbed the sides of her forehead. He didn't make a joke or said anything in response. He just went and got the sake as instructed, even pulling 2 cups out to use. He continued to say nothing as he poured the drink into the cups. His silence was finally broken after they both drained their cups. Well, this puts us in a bit of a predicament, he remarked. That would be putting it mildly. Tsunade grumbled as she reached for the sake bottle to pour another portion for herself. Itachi couldn't have picked a worse time to do this. When he heard that, Jiraiya couldn't help but laugh. I think it's safe to say that it hasn't been a good time to kidnap an Uchiha since the massacre, he told her, earning himself a glare in response. Look at the bright side. He did you a favor by killing those 3. I fail to see how that is a good thing, she said in reply. Come on, Tsunade. We both know Danzo was a war hawk and Koharu and Hamura were more inclined to agree with him than us. They were the ones who came up with that Kami-forsaken plan in the first place. You forget. We were the ones who agreed to it, she retorted, making him frown. She thought that he was trying to deflect the blame of what happened and couldn't let that happen. They were to blame as well for that. The point remains that you are now rid of 3 problems that have been hounding you since you took the position of Hokage. Itachi did us a favor, the Toad Sage repeated. And he also stole Sasuke, which I think pretty much cancels out that favor. Not to mention the fact we don't know whether this was on the orders of the Akatsuki, or if he was doing this on his own, she snapped. They stayed silent for a minute, staring at each other. Finally, Tsunade closed her eyes with a sigh. I never did say I was sorry, did I? Sorry for what? He asked, being a little confused. For what happened to your daughter? The Slug Sage clarified. When she had learned what happened to her, she had drained 4 bottles of sake that night, and fell asleep at the desk, where Shizune found her the next morning. Despite coming from his loins, Jiraiya's daughter had inherited almost none of her father's habits, it would have been none at all, if she had worked in a different place. Why are you apologizing? You didn't cause her death, he said shortly, taking another drink of sake. Even though he tried to cover it, she could tell that he was still hurting. I'm still sorry. She was a good person. That she was. He put the cup down. I need to go get ready. He left the office, all but slamming the door shut behind him. She didn't say anything, she just poured another round. It's not just her death that haunts him. The others still do, she thought sadly. While his daughter was not the only child Jiraiya had sired, she had been the only one to have reached adulthood. The others had either been stillborn, died of a sickness, or had been killed by vengeful shinobi. All of them had made her teammate cry, but it was the last one that earned him the nickname of Sato no Kyoki, the village's madness, for he would hunt down those who murdered his children. And every time he did, she and Orochimaru, when he was still loyal, would be right behind him. Location, Konoha Hospital. So, don't worry, Sakura. Ino said to her friend, standing by her bed. We'll get Sasuke back. At least this time, he didn't leave voluntarily. She offered a weak smile at her admittedly poor attempt at humor. No one said a word about it. It was already uncomfortable enough in the hospital room. Sakura, however, just smiled back. Thanks, Ino. She said to the Yamanaka. Both the Konoha teams were in the room as well as Team Paragon, although Naruto was hugging the wall and trying to stay out of eyesight of Sakura. I'm sorry, I can't go with you guys. Don't complain. Kiba told her. We'll be back with Sasuke before you know it. I'll hold you to that promise, Kiba. Even though she didn't say anything of the sort, it almost sounded like she was going to hurt him if he failed to bring the Uchiha back. He all but flinched away at those words, hearing the silent threat in them. We should probably get going. We delay any longer, Itachi's going to have a bigger lead. He quickly left the room after saying that. Despite the manner in which he left, Kiba is correct. Shino stated. We should leave soon. He left the room, following his teammate. Hinata went after them, giving Sakura a wave of farewell before going through the door. This is going to be so troublesome. Shikamaru muttered as he left. But even though he said those words, everyone still there could tell he was focused just by looking at his eyes. They were determined. Choji followed his friend and teammate out, just as determined as he was. Ino gave Sakura one last reassurance before going after them. Would you two wait up? She shouted after them, making her friend smile again. Team Paragon began to file out as well, with Naruto being last in the line. When he was about to leave the room, Sakura spoke. Naruto, wait. She said. He turned around in silence and faced her. They stared at each other for what seemed like a long time to the blonde. Finally, he couldn't hold her gaze and looked away. What do you want? He asked, looking out the window. She got out of the bed and walked a little shakily over to him. Taking hold of his chin with her fingers, she moved his head back, so that they locked eyes again. You will bring him back. She told him, her voice commanding. All of a sudden, the blonde found himself remembering the start of that thrice-damned mission 3 years ago. He could remember the woman in front of him sobbing and begging him to bring Sasuke back. But now, she wasn't sobbing, and she was ordering him to do the same thing. He found himself nervous and afraid of her. He wanted to look away, but her eyes held him in place. Knocking her hand away from his chin, he bolted out of the room and past the other teams. He did not stop until he was out of the hospital and about halfway to the gates. What in the name of Kami is wrong with you? Kiba demanded as he came up to the blonde, riding on Akamaru. Have you forgotten how rude it is to run in a hospital? Normally, he would have said something sarcastic, but that small part of his brain, as well as the fact that he could still see Sakura's eyes pinning him in place, ensured that he didn't. Sorry. He said, not making eye contact with the Inuzuka. He would have continued ranting, but that single word made him stop. Did you just apologize? He asked. Hey guys. Naruto just apologized to me. Me. He shouted back at the others, who were catching up to them. While it is indeed surprising, you need not shout it for the whole street to hear. Shino admonished his teammate. Oh come on, Shino. It's something that should be known. He complained. Shut up already, Inuzuka. Naruto told him, his voice clipped and short. When he heard that, Kiba wanted to retort. But one look at the blonde's face made him change his decision. It was a look that promised severe pain, dismemberment, or death if he didn't. Sheesh, you can tell they used to be on the same team. He silently said to himself. They've got the silent death threat down pat. Is everything okay, Naruto? Hinata asked, forcing herself not to stutter. It was really hard to fall back into old habits whenever the blonde was close. Is it any concern of yours, Hyuga? He asked back in a snappish tone of voice. She winced at those words, like they had actually slapped her. He would have continued, had Azula not put a hand on his shoulder and made him look her in the eye. After they made eye contact and kept it for a couple of seconds, he closed his eyes and took a deep breath. Thanks, he told her in a whisper. While the others could only watch them in stunned fascination, the members of Team Paragon kept walking to the gates. They really do love each other, Ino said in wonder. While she knew that they were together, it had never really dawned on her until just now. This is going to make bringing Naruto back much harder, she thought to herself as she watched them walk down the road. When noticed that they weren't following, Sokka looked back at the two Konoha teams. You guys might want to keep up, he told them. Otherwise, you're going to be left behind. We're coming, Shikamaru assured him. Troublesome man, he muttered to himself when he saw the tribesman turn his head back around. Hinata gave the Nara clan heir an amused look and smile. That troublesome man has been your toughest challenger when it comes to shogi, she said. Whenever the two of them sat down for a round nowadays, it was always interesting to see who would win. Why do you think I call him troublesome? He asked her. Never mind, let's just get moving before they do actually leave us behind. They quickly went after Team Paragon. They caught up with them within a matter of seconds. They spent the rest of the short walk to the gates in silence. When they got there and saw both Jiraiya and Kakashi waiting for them, June took the lead. Okay, who's got something that has the younger Uchiha's scent on it? She asked them from atop of Nyla. Choji has his Chikuto, Shino told her, answering the question. The Akimichi pulled it out for everyone to see. All right, hand it to one of my teammates, she instructed him. He did so, giving it to Suki, who then held out for Nyla to sniff. The Shirshu leaned forward and started sniffing the Chikuto. You got the scent, Nyla? She asked him. He turned away from the blade and strained to run out the gates. Then let's go, she barked. The Shirshu took that as a command and lurched forward, running down the road away from the gates of Konoha. Follow that Shirshu, Sokka commanded, taking after them with Akela at his side. The others followed his example, and went after them. In a mere matter of seconds, all anyone could see of them was a large dust cloud that was rapidly getting smaller. Location, Tobi. He waited in silence. While all six Pains and Konan were sealing away the Hachibi, along with a few Zetsu clones to help the process along, he was waiting for an important message. Soon enough, the original Zetsu appeared from out of the ground. Well, the masked shinobi asked, getting to the point. It's done, the white part of Zetsu told him. Itachi has Sasuke. And where he is now? On his way to the designated location in the Land of Water, the black part of Zetsu answered. He should arrive soon. Good, he declared. We shall go meet up with him. I take it that Deidara is already there? Yes, he is. By the way, Tobi, Pain has asked that you might want to consider adding new members to official positions within the Akatsuki. Tell him to look over members himself and give any noteworthy ones to me later, he ordered with a non-committed tone of voice. And will you look over them? The white part of Zetsu asked him, curious to hear what he would say. I might and I might not. In the end, it doesn't matter. With that said, he disappeared into the swirling vortex that was focused around the hole in his mask. When he was gone, Zetsu vanished into the ground. Location, Sasuke. When he came to, he was groggy. He couldn't feel his own body, and he had the vaguest sense of moving. But all he saw was complete and utter darkness. What's going on? He asked himself, trying to open his eyes, only to find out that he couldn't. He then slowly realized that he had been blindfolded. He tried to reach up and take the blindfold off, but his hands were bound. As he As he tried to figure out how his hands were tied, a voice spoke. "I see that you're awake, Sasuke." He went still in shock. He knew that voice very well. It was his brother's. "He kidnapped me," he figured out with dawning horror. "It's too early for you to come to, little brother," his brother told him. "Go back to sleep." He was still struggling weakly when he vaguely felt a thump on the back of his head. "No, I can't," he thought weakly before he finally went under again. Location: Retrieval Team. They had been pushing hard all through the day. But just as the sun began to set, Nyla began to tire. They could tell it was happening by how the Shursha was slowing down. When they reached a clearing in the forest, June reined in Nyla. "Okay, we'll make camp here," she declared as she got down. Nyla seemed to make a whining sound, making her look at him. "No excuse, you're tiring and we both know it." "She's right, you lousy excuse for fur," Naruto agreed, casually insulting the Shurshu. Nyla didn't do anything in response to that insult. He just lay down on the ground and weakly hissed at him. "See? You're too tired to try and kill me," he pointed out. If the Shursha hadn't been tired, the blonde would be avoiding his tongue right now. "Naruto, stop insulting Nyla," June admonished him. "All right, set up the stuff and get the dinner fire going," she ordered the rest of the group, looking at them. "We'll eat a good-sized meal tonight because we'll be eating breakfast and lunch as we move tomorrow. Also, we'll be up and moving before dawn." No one said a word in complaint, although Ino looked like she was about to, but decided not to after getting looks from both her teammates. They all got to work and set up their respective stuff. Once the sleeping bags were out and ready to use and the fire was going, the food they had hurriedly packed came out and over the fire in the form of a stew. "Hey, Naruto, where's the ramen?" Kiba asked the blonde, part curious and part humorous. He hadn't really seen Naruto eat ramen ever since he had been brought back to Konoha. Quite frankly, it was a little unnerving. "I would have thought that you at least had some of the instant variety lying around. We're on the hunt for someone, which requires us to be ready as soon as we can. You'll have to forgive me if I don't find eating ramen, instant or otherwise, to be a priority on this mission," he replied with acid-like sarcasm. The Inuzuka winced, like the words had actually hurt him. "Be nice, Naruto," Sokka told him. He didn't mean anything by it. It was a stupid question, the blonde stated. "No, a stupid question would be, did we forget the meat?" he replied with sarcasm and a roll of his eyes. "And that's a point to him," Jiraiya commented in an offhand manner. The other members of Team Paragon agreed with that assessment with nods of their heads. Even Akela was nodding in agreement. Nyla didn't because he was too busy scarfing down the steak June had tossed at him. "In any case, stew's done," the tribesman declared, pulling out the ladle and giving himself the first serving. The rest of them took the ladle one by one and served themselves. The next few minutes were spent mostly in silence, aside from the sounds of them eating. There was no conversation, just them trying to fill their bellies. When they were done, there was some small talk, but they mostly just stared at the fire. "Hey, Sokka, how have the others been doing since we left?" Choji asked, briefly hesitating when he came to the end of the question. He also looked over at Naruto, but quickly focused back on the water paragon. "Aang and the others are doing okay," he answered as he gave a second, but smaller, helping of the stew. "They've got their hands full with making sure the new country is coming along. And making sure that Aang doesn't do anything stupid," Azula chimed in. Again, the members of Team Paragon agreed with what she said by nodding, although with Suki, it was a little reluctant. "My, isn't that harsh of you?" Kakashi commented from where he sat, his face occasionally covered by the shadow of the fire, which helped him eat his food without anyone seeing what was under his mask. "No offense, Kakashi-sensei, but you haven't met Aang," Ino told the masked shinobi. "He could be a little idiotic sometimes." Sometimes? Repeated Naruto, like he couldn't believe what he had just heard. Am I the only one who remembers that little zoo incident in Ba Sing Se? And don't talk to me about his belief that the colony of Kozan would actually be spared, that was just plain stupidity. Even though they somewhat agreed with him, the two teams that had gone to the bending countries gave him a stern look. That's a little uncalled for, Naruto. Shino admonished him. He is not that bad. No, he kinda is. Sokka replied. Trust me, had you guys been there earlier in the adventure, you would have seen a lot more of Aang's stupidity. He probably would have mentioned Katara's acts of stupidity, but decided not to, mostly because of the fact that she was his sister, and they were currently focused on the Avatar. But he does have his moments. He quickly defended his friend. June scoffed at that. Like what? She asked, clearly still not having a high opinion of the last air nomad. That one night in Ba Sing Se after the war, the tribesman answered with Naruto nodding in agreement. That was probably a night they were never going to forget. Flashback. The two of them had been sitting in a corner table of the Jasmine Dragon, enjoying a quiet evening. They had been dealing with the business of the new country all day, and it had gotten exhausting near the end. Now they were relaxing, enjoying a cup of tea and a game of Pai Sho. And I win. Naruto declared, moving a tile into the spot that gave him victory. Sokka saw that as well. The spirits take it. He grumbled good naturally as he sipped his tea. Don't be too hard on yourself, I learned how to play this game from the master himself. As if he had heard those words, Iroh came out from the back, serving people his tea. The tribesman laughed at that. You have a point there. He conceded as he watched the Dragon of the West enjoy his passion. You want to play another round? Sure, why not? The blonde replied, taking back his tiles and readying the board for another game. Sokka did the same in silence. Once everything was ready, so were they. But before they could start again, Naruto groaned and covered his eyes. What is it? Sokka asked him, immediately on edge. Aang's here and is coming straight towards us. He explained, hand still covering his eyes. The water paragon sighed in relief. Don't scare me like that, Naruto. I thought something bad had happened. He doesn't count. Be nice. He told his fellow paragon before turning his attention over to the air nomad coming their way. Hey, Aang, he said in greeting. You want to join us? Thanks, Sokka. Aang replied as he sat down next to the tribesman. Hey, listen. Can you guys, help me with something? He asked the two of them, suddenly nervous. What did you do this time? Naruto asked in exasperation. It felt they were getting to the point where they couldn't turn their backs on him. If they did, he was off to his next idiotic idea. It's nothing like that. He immediately protested, leaping to his own defense, and almost out of his chair. Even though the blonde looked like he didn't believe him, Sokka paid close attention. What do you need? He asked. I need you two to keep an eye on me while I talk to someone. And why would you need to have us watch you as you talk to someone? The tribesman asked him. Usually, if Aang wanted to talk to someone, he didn't ask for someone to watch out for him, even after everything that's happened. Who I want to talk to isn't exactly alive. He admitted. When he said that, both Sokka and Naruto had an idea of what he wanted to do. Either he wanted to go into the spirit world or bring someone out of it. As it turned out, it was the latter. Once the two had agreed to help him, they ended up heading down into Old Ba Sing Se. Naruto insisted going through the palace, as the old badger mole was busy at that time. As they reached the place where Naruto had turned the tables on them, they walked through the water. Naruto walked on top of it, to reach the center of the area. Amidst the sound of rushing water, Aang sat down and began to meditate. Both Sokka and Naruto hung back as the blue mist began to roll off the avatar and shifted until it was front of him, coalescing into the form of Roku. Hello again, Aang, the previous avatar greeted the current one with a warm, grandfatherly smile. What is it that you need? The truth, Roku, he answered in a cold tone, well, as cold as he could be. His face was set in a stern expression that actually made him seem older than he was. The truth? Repeated Roku. What truth? The truth about what caused the war. How it actually started. He explained. I want to hear what happened come from your mouth. I have already told you what had happened, Aang. I had even showed you what had happened. The previous avatar sounded vaguely annoyed at the fact that he had to repeat himself. Aang closed his eyes and sighed. I had hoped it wouldn't be true, but I guess it was a foolish hope to begin with. What do you mean? The annoyance in his voice had been replaced with curiosity. The last of the air nomads opened his eyes and looked straight at his predecessor. You've lied to me, Roku. You've been lying to me all this time. He was angry at the fact that his past self would do something like that. I have never done that to you. I have always told you the truth. It's your truth, the truth that you would want me to believe. But it's not the truth. It's not the truth of what happened. He stated with a look that dared Roku to say otherwise. And he dared. What I have told you was the truth. He insisted, his face now frowning slightly. Anyone who has told you otherwise has been lying. So, Sud lied to me? Sud? He repeated, surprised at what he heard. Yeah, Sud, Naruto chimed in. You know, your old earthbending master whose little sister you killed? Even though he sounded cheerful, everyone there could hear the accusatory tone in his voice. Sud died a long time ago. It would have been impossible for you to talk to him. Roku objected. It was impossible for him to be alive. Funny, he seemed alive the last time we talked to him. Sokka ideally commented. Then let him approach me. I would appreciate knowing that one of my old friends is still alive. Sorry, not happening. The blonde told him. Sud doesn't even consider you a friend anymore, let alone an old one. He sounded pleased as he saw the look of pained surprise appear on the Fire Nation avatar's face. Sud told me what truly happened all those years ago, Roku. Aang told his predecessor. He told me about how you thought that the Paragons were restricting you. He told me about how you murdered his little sister and your supposedly best friend's son. His face darkened as he noticed what was hanging around Sokka's and Naruto's neck, as they had pulled them out for this. The moment they took those medallions and became Paragons, they stopped being those people. They became restrictions on the Avatar. You must be wise, Aang. Do not let the words they tell hold you back. When he heard those words, the current Avatar scowled, which he didn't do often. You mean like how you told me to be decisive because you weren't? I heard about what happened at Yudao during that fire. You seemed pretty decisive then when you murdered those two. It had to be done. Roku shouted, looking furious for the first time. The Avatar is supposed to keep the balance between the bending countries by any and all means. In order to keep the balance, the countries must stay separate. Those colonies were an invitation to chaos. I tried to make people understand this, but the Paragons were always there to stop me, always threatening me with permanent exile or death. You are overstepping your boundaries, Roku. Sokka told him, his voice cold and face harsh. If all of the bending countries agree on something, even the Avatar must obey their decisions. The Avatar has no boundaries and obeys no one. The bending countries listen to him. And if any try to hold him back or restrain him, it is his duty to remove them. I've heard enough. Aang declared, earning everyone's attention. Your actions caused the war that lasted 100 years, Roku. Because of you, a tyrant took the throne of the Fire Lord. Because of you, countless people lost their lives fighting in this war. Because of you, the colonies had forgotten what they were supposed to represent. And now, we must fix your mistakes. You plan to allow the colonies to continue? He sounded both somewhat horrified and angered at the mere idea of it. No. We plan to take them all and turn them into a fifth country, a new country. No. No. You cannot do that. Roku shouted in outrage. You would destroy the balance of the four countries. No, we would make it stronger than ever before. So, you would destroy everything the previous avatars have worked so hard for? You shame us, Aang. It appears that I must once again help you see the right path. The blue mist that made him seem to reach out, trying to grab the air nomad. But it recoiled when both Naruto and Sokka stood in front of Aang, eyes pitch black as they protected him from the mist. You forget your place, Roku. They told him as one, their medallions infused with the same blackness. You are no longer the Avatar, you are merely a guide to your successor. Yet you shame your position and forget what you were meant to do. The Avatar does have boundaries. If he did not, he would be a tyrant. We, the Paragons, are not there to restrict the Avatar. We are there to ensure that he uses the powers he's been given for the benefit of the bending countries. And if I don't, my life is forfeit. Aang said quietly as he stood up from where he sat. When he had first heard what the Paragons were supposed to do, he had been both scared and horrified at the mere idea. But now, he had accepted it. It was a part of the burden he carried as the Avatar, something his predecessor hadn't accepted. As you are now, Sokka said, staring down at Roku. We deliver judgment upon you, Roku. You are banished from the Avatar's sight. Naruto declared. You will never appear before him again nor try to advise him as long as he knows who he is. Now be gone. The blue mist dissipated at his order and Roku disappeared for good. End flashback. That was one of the rare times Aang acted like the Avatar he was and not like the 13-year-old idiot he wanted to be. Naruto said, finishing the story. The Konoha shinobi, aside from Jiraiya, who had heard the story soon after it had happened, had been spellbounded by the story. Wow. Ino said. It was the only thing she could say. She had no idea that the kid she and her teammates had protected could do something like, she didn't count what happened in the desert, as he was very angry at the time. Sounds like Aang is growing up. Kiba remarked with an easy grin. Yes, he sounds different from the boy we originally met just outside of Omashu. Hinata agreed with her teammate. She almost wanted to see Aang again after listening to that story, just to see how much he had changed. When he heard those two, Naruto snorted in derision. He's not growing up fast enough. He told them. And it's getting annoying. Cut him some slack, Naruto. Suki protested softly. He's only a kid. So are we, but we don't have that excuse. He retorted. I'm not going to cut him any slack when he insists on acting like an idiotic kid. Again, with the pot and the kettle, you really need to stop doing this to yourself, Gaki. The Kyuubi remarked from within. Number 1, that was 3 years ago, and number 2, I was not talking to you. He mentally snapped at the fox. He really didn't need it at that moment. He does have a point. Shikamaru said, earning everyone's attention. Naruto, I mean. Just because Aang is 13 doesn't mean he should act childish. Confronting Roku was a good step to being more mature, but he can't just stop there. Well, it's a pity we're not around right to keep an eye on him. Azula remarked with an innocent expression on her face that everyone just knew was faked. And why is that? Jiraiya asked her, deciding to see where this was going to go. I'm fairly certain that he was about to enter puberty when we left. It would have been very entertaining to see how he behaved around Katara. She said with a smirk that seemed almost vicious in nature. There was a moment of silence around the fire before everyone, minus a slightly confused Kakashi, burst out laughing. It went on for a good 5 minutes as the image in their heads was just too funny. It also helped relieve them of some of the pressure they had on their shoulders about their mission. Oh, by the spirits, Sokka said as he winded down from laughing. Thank you for that, Azula. That would have really been something to watch. Yeah, now I wish I was there watching it myself. Suki remarked. She would probably have a hard time containing her laughs whenever she saw it happening, but she would enjoy it. We probably won't miss much. Jiraiya commented. He's got a couple of years, and that gives us plenty of time to see him be awkward around her. He grinned when he said that, and mostly everyone there grinned back at him. Kakashi didn't because he wasn't following. On the other hand, the laughter died off of Naruto's face, and he stared at the fire in silence. Well, if he does, you guys have a good time. June told them. I doubt I'll be around to see the action happen. You're not staying with us? The Kyoshi warrior in the group asked her. She was a little sad at the prospect that the bounty hunter would leave. She shrugged her shoulders. Nothing personal, Suki, but once we get back to our side of the planet, I'll probably be on my way to my next bounty. Besides, if I stuck around, I don't think I could stop myself from giving that brat an ass-kicking. That's a fair enough of a point. Sokka conceded, with his girlfriend nodding in agreement. If they were being honest, they had forgotten about the bounty hunter's dislike, if not outright hatred, for the Avatar. Don't worry, odds are one of you guys will run into me down the road. It'll probably be more so when I finally decide to take an apprentice. She said, almost to herself. Have you given that any thought, June? Naruto asked her, taking his gaze away from the fire. His silence had been noticed by a few people, but they all decided not to say anything about it, at least at that moment. No, not really, she admitted with another shrug of her shoulders. I've got time before I make up my mind. But if push comes to shove, I'll just take one of the Avatar's kids. Wouldn't that constitute as kidnapping, especially if Aang refuses to allow you to do such a thing? Shino asked her. It sounded like a kidnapping to him, and he was fairly certain that Aang wouldn't let something like that happen to his children. She smirked in response. Not if I put it the right way. What does that mean? Hinata asked. If I wave the words their nomad culture and heritage in front of him, he'll have no choice but to accept what I offer. Whether or not he likes the idea, being a paragon of the air nomad is just as important as being an airbender. She explained. How very cold of you, Kakashi commented. He didn't sound like he was insulting or accusing her. He made it sound like he was discussing the weather. Hey, it's not happening tomorrow, I've got plenty of time. She defended herself. She looked over at her fellow paragons. So how about you guys? You figure out who'd you want for a student? Suki shook her head in the negative. I haven't really given it much thought either, June. But off the top of my head, I'd say I would gladly teach a person who would want to prove himself. I'd take someone who wanted to be as good as any bender, and be able to stand on his own 2 feet, than someone who thought it would be easy. I hear that. Sokka agreed. For me, I'd probably take someone who wanted to be known as their own person. Someone who didn't want to get something because of the family name she has. Not bad, you two, June told them before looking over at the blonde. What about you, Naruto? You got anyone in mind for an apprentice? He stayed silent for a minute, staring at the fire. Someone who's passionate enough and has enough of an iron will to stand for what they believe. He finally said, speaking softly. Had he spoken any softer, everyone else probably wouldn't have heard him. Okay, I think it's time to catch some shut-eye. Jiraiya declared, standing up from where he sat, putting his bowl down. Everyone agreed, began to move around, putting their bowls away, and heading to their respective sleeping bags. The only person who didn't move was Naruto. I'll take the first watch. He volunteered, taking out a cigarette and lighting it up. Although his bowl was put away, he hadn't moved from where he sat. Fine, wake one of us in an hour. Jiraiya told him. He nodded in acknowledgement of the order. Soon enough, everyone else was asleep, although Azula had given him one last look, which he had waved off before going to sleep. As he stared at the night sky, all he could think of was Sakura's eyes, and how they held him in place as she ordered him to bring her teammate back. I guess things really have changed, he mused to himself as he took a drag and blew the smoke into the fire. She's not the same person she was 3 years ago. It had been a fact he had known ever since that first talk in 3 years he had with Team Kakashi. But he hadn't really realized it until that moment. Of course she isn't. That small part of his brain spoke up. She has become a powerful shinobi. Perhaps when you are finally done with this mission and come back to Konoha, you could ask the Hokage for her hand in marriage. I am not going back to the village, he instantly shouted at the voice. And I have a girlfriend already, who I would never leave. She is a foreigner who has no loyalties to Konoha. As such, it would be both better and wiser for you to choose someone from the village to share your bed. It told him in a cool, collected tone that made him set his teeth on end. But even though he did, somehow, the words made sense to him. It would be better in the long run if he chose to be in a relationship with someone from inside the village. Realizing where his thoughts were going, he shook his head, like he was trying to shake those thoughts loose. Screw you and your wisdom, I love Azula. I would never betray her. Very well, I am willing to make concessions. If you can convince her to stay in Konoha and be loyal to Konoha, you would be able to live with her. It said, keeping that cool and collected tone. An image of him and Azula came to the blonde's mind. They were in the house. He was wearing a village headband and held her in his arms, gently stroking her slightly swollen stomach. It was a picture of happiness and content. But it wasn't something he wanted. That's not going to happen, he stated. I do hope to have that kind of future with Azula, but it will never be inside the village. We'll have that kind of life on the other side of the planet. Do not be so sure. After all, the future is not set in stone, but your loyalty to Konoha is. It still had that cool, collected tone, but now it also sounded like it had already won this argument. I am not loyal to the village, he screamed. The voice didn't respond. It just left him there, in the night, and with his thoughts. He was now less sure of what he wanted to do once the mission was done. Throughout his watch, he silently wrestled with the idea that he might be loyal to the village after all. The next few days, they spent chasing the scent. They had paid no attention to where they were. They just focused on following Nyla, who was focused on following the scent of their target. How far behind are we? Kakashi asked June as they ran through a shallow canyon. We're still a day behind, she answered, keeping her eyes on the path ahead of them. This Itachi is keeping on the move at the pace. Right now, either having him slow down or stop completely would be the only ways to catch up. I noticed that as well, he replied, agreeing with her. Same here, Kiba said from the other side of her. Akamaru was able to keep pace with Nyla. If anything, he looked like he was enjoying it. Maybe we'll get lucky, huh? I doubt it, June said shortly, keeping her focus on the trail. They kept on running through the canyon, now in silence. There was no need for long periods of conversations. That was what the fire at night was for, which they were all looking forward to now. Just as the end of the canyon came into view, and got closer and closer, Akamaru suddenly stopped. Whoa. What's wrong, buddy? Kiba asked the dog, who began growling. The Inuzuka frowned for a brief moment before sniffing the air. His eyes went wide for a moment before he covered them with a groan. We are such idiots. What's the matter, Kiba? Hinata asked her teammate. Everyone else had stopped and now looked at the shinobi riding the dog, of which some were looking at him with irritation and annoyance. We should have paid attention to where we were going, he answered cryptically, still covering his eyes. Akamaru seemed to whine in agreement with his human partner. What does that mean? Sokka asked. Akela was at his side and sniffing the air, trying to figure out what had caused Akamaru to stop. However, Kakashi had already sniffed the air, and had figured it out. "We're in the land of Earth," he told them. At that moment, the retrieval team found themselves surrounded by shinobi with headbands bearing the symbol of Iwagakure. Location: Tobi. When he formed himself into the cave, he could tell something was wrong. He was in a cave that led to a deep system of tunnels that was situated in the land of water. Deidara was supposed to be here already, and have the place ready to go. And yet, the place was dark, and he heard no one else in there with him. Wordlessly, he reached out, grabbed a torch he could vaguely see in the dark, and lit it with a quick jutsu. "What's going on?" the white part of Zetsu asked as he came out of the ground. "Something is not right here. Follow me," he ordered, walking into the tunnel at the end of the cave. As he went, he lit other torches he found, giving them more light to work with, and yet, they still didn't see anything that was wrong. "Where is Deidara?" the black part of Zetsu wondered aloud as he walked. "He should have realized that we were here by now and come to us. Perhaps something has happened to him?" his white counterpart suggested as he and Tobi walked into a larger cave. "I gathered that much. The question is what happened to him." "I'd say something permanent," Tobi remarked as he walked around the room, lighting the torches. Zetsu had thought that was him injecting something into the conversation. But when the cave was fully lit, they saw that it wasn't that at all. Against the wall that led to another tunnel, which would then lead into the system of tunnels, was Deidara. His throat had been slashed, and judging by the look of surprise on his face, he had been caught off guard when he died. He had to have been dead a couple of days, for he didn't look freshly dead. "This cave and the tunnel system is a secret," the white part of Zetsu stated. "It's almost impossible to find unless you know what to look for." "Which someone did and used that to his advantage," Tobi said as he stared down at the dead body. "He was also someone knew that Deidara was here and was able to catch him by surprise, killing him." "What does that mean?" the black part of Zetsu asked him. He turned to him, the Sharingan in his right eye almost seemed to blaze with something like anger or fury at that moment. "It means that Itachi has betrayed us." That's it for this reading. Hit like and subscribe for a free ticket pass going to the different worlds of anime fanfictions. Looking forward to having you on board again.